I was sent this xCool mini electric precision screwdriver set to show off. It's a 48-bit set, efficient, and portable. What do I think about it? xCool is a brand of products from Gadget, an online store that sells some pretty neat items, and I was excited when they asked if I wanted to take a look at their electric precision screwdriver set. Inside the box there was a pry bar, tweezers, and a 1.5 foot long Type A to Type C cable for charging. All nice additions along with the actual kit itself. A sturdy, premium-feeling all-metal case with a release button up top to get inside at the good stuff. This may or may not be my favorite feature. I could do this all day. Next to the release button, there's also this Type-C input for charging, rated for 5 volts at 0.15 amps, and indicator lights to let you know your charge amount when plugged in. Once opened, reveals the bread and butter of this kit. 9 S2 steel drill bits ranging from 0.8mm to 3.2mm. I don't know why 3.2mm and 3mm are swapped. And a lovely assortment of 39 S2 steel screw bits to access many of your devices. 36 of them are C4 28mm. You've got your Phillips and slotted, hex and Torx, and then some other odd shapes for more niche screws. The final 3 of which are longer 45mm bits in the form of Phillips 0 and 1 and slotted size 2. Other than the place where the precision screwdriver sits, there's 2 other notable locations. There's a spot for the chuck nut. The one that came pre-installed is meant for drill bits and has an accompanying chuck. There's a separate chuck nut for the rest of the bits and sits in a dedicated magnetized slot so you don't lose it. However, that one also had a chuck. It could be an extra, but since most of the time I'm in bit mode rather than drilling mode, I've placed the square chuck around one of the drill bits. It should also be noted that you need at least one of the chucks installed on the screwdriver for it to properly sit in the case for charging, otherwise it won't reach the contacts properly. Another cool addition to this case is a magnetization and demagnetization zone for your bits. Even the promotional material shows the entire screwdriver utilizing this zone, but within the manual it describes how you need to use the bit alone in this area since the screwdriver contains a magnet, which will affect the effect of the magnetization and demagnetization. Though in my testing, the magnetization isn't very strong, and the demagnetization doesn't seem to work very well either. And maybe I'm just doing it wrong, but this feels a little weak. The screwdriver itself fits well in the hand. It's elegant, and each side has 3 concave channels that run down the side. Just like the case, it's a pretty yet simple design, and probably also has something to do with grip. There are 2 buttons that'll fit right along where your finger will sit, either to screw or unscrew, and a 3rd button up top next to the charging contacts that handles 2 different functions. A single press will activate a light at the bottom of the shaft, where 3 LEDs should illuminate whatever you're working on. It's handy, but as a battery saving measure, it doesn't stay on for long, about 5 seconds, and you'll have to either use the electric screwing again to have it reappear, or press the button up top twice to disable LEDs and then to re-enable them. I noticed this as I was screwing a motherboard down and needed to see down into a tight spot. I didn't like how soon the light would go out, but it's not a big deal. It could be though if you're trying to line up your screw and the light goes out. If you don't want to adjust your grip and hit that function button twice to re-enable it, you'll have to screw electrically for a moment to have it come back on, which is okay unless you have a screw on the tip, in which case it may get thrown off into the void. The other function of this button is to adjust the different torque modes of the screwdriver. 5 different levels ranging between 0.1 to 0.3 Newton meters. It doesn't clearly say what the 3 in-between modes are, but if I were a betting boy, it would be linear. I also can't clearly tell the difference. Perhaps 0.2 Newton meter is very hard to distinguish, but it's to help ensure you don't over-torque screws into your devices. On settings 1 through 3, if the force of the screw is too much for this little guy and it stops spinning, the LEDs will blink to give you a visual indicator. On settings 4 and 5 though, there is no such indicator. This screwdriver also boasts a 400 RPM motor as one of their main selling points, and while I can't accurately measure this, I do see that other electric precision screwdrivers on the market are typically 200 RPM, so I used my slow-mo camera setting on my phone to record for a second, and I counted between 6 and 7 rotations. Multiplied by 60 would suggest somewhere between 360 and 420 rotations per minute. So I would have to agree that it's probably a 400 RPM motor inside this bad boy. But all of this is useless if a screwdriver doesn't drive screws. So how does the xCool Mini Precision Screwdriver fare at its main and original purpose? Well, it's pretty great. It's not going to replace my standard full-size screwdriver. It absolutely can put together a computer, though it may have troubles getting into tight spaces. That's why I have Longboy for. What it's great for are laptops, GPUs, and also cameras, according to their promotional material. I tested on my spare Canon T2i, and these screws were in tighter and needed to be loosened more than the torque of the motor could handle, so I used it manually for the parts I needed to. And this is a place where the precision screwdriver lacks, in my opinion, when you have to use it manually. Maybe I'm applying too many Newton meters, but sometimes it spins freely, not grabbing the screw, and even when it does work, there's a blank space where you have to turn it a little before it'll work manually. I'm sorry, I don't have the technical words here. I hope you know what I mean and can see. And this is a bit of a problem because while yes, the electric screwing is great and alone make me prefer using this than my other precision screwdrivers, if I have to use this for manual turning, it's just not as good as the other two, I'm afraid. What might make it better and fix this issue of mine is if it had less give and more resistance, allowing for no slippage when screwing manually, and maybe a knurling spinny thing on top. On Gear 5, the one on the little screen labeled as the screw, you can triple press the desired direction and it'll spin indefinitely, and can lead to some enjoyable bugs, or as I call them, features. It's actually a pretty handy feature if you're taking out screws in rapid succession and don't want to keep holding the buttons. Also, since this screwdriver has a motor, it's going to make a little bit of noise. It's not awfully loud or distracting, but it does produce a sound that is something to keep in mind. I did try out the drilling as well. I used it to drill holes in my IKEA shelf for a TV mount, and I did need a bigger drill for the holes I required. I did get the holes started, and it was a good way to test out this feature. Maybe through thinner wood it would have done better, but even on the highest setting it kept getting stuck, stopping its drilling. I had to go in and out a couple of times before it made its way all the way through. Not too impressive of a showing here. IKEA shelf wins this round. This screwdriver has a battery rated for 350 milliamp hours and claims it can drive over 500 screws and drill over 40 holes in a single battery, and I think that's an understatement. This battery lasts a long time. On my first charge, I was just driving lots of screws, drilled a bunch of holes into cardboard. I didn't test the over 500 screws claim, but they themselves know that this is a very conservative estimate. I even would do that thing where you press the button 3 times and it just keeps going and let it spin for over an hour. The light probably also drains a little as well when you have that on, but I think unless it's your job to drive over 500 screws a day, you don't have to worry about charging this often. I had 2 weeks to get this video out, so I used this screwdriver considerably often for over a week, and I only had to charge it once. And that was after my rigorous testing trying to drain the battery, as well as just letting it sit spinning for over an hour. It seems the full battery icon is most of the lifespan. You see a sliver gone when the battery charge is 2 solid dots with the third flashing indicating 50 to 75% charge. And a second sliver gone, the icon would lead you to believe it's above 50%. But when plugged in, you only have a solid dot with a second dot flashing, indicating under 50%. When the battery on the display went down, another sliver indicating under 50%. When charging, only the first LED was blinking, suggesting the battery is under 25%. And there isn't a lesser icon than this. The screwdriver will soon stop working, and then the display will shut off. There isn't a noticeable performance degradation as the battery decreases. It's a workhorse all the way to the end. Charging time on the website says 150 to 180 minutes, while on the manual it says 160 to 200 minutes. In my testing, the battery took 180 minutes to go from 0 to 100%. Oh, turns out there was a little more juice left in it after it shut off randomly, but then it soon died again. What killed it both times was me being aggressive with it, holding and stopping the bit with my fingers, which is a good notable thing about it. It won't hurt you. You can stop it by grabbing it, and this amount of resistance could be attained by a tight screw, so I doubt I'm hurting it. But even if I am, as a reviewer, I'm supposed to be stress testing this. Either way, the battery lasts a long time, incredibly efficient. Now I have 2 other precision screwdrivers, an older 54-bit iFixit kit that I use quite often, and a 42-bit Cobalt kit that I'm less of a fan of. It should also be noted that I tried using other bits within this xCool precision screwdriver, and the iFixits did not fit, which was disappointing. However, the Cobalts did, which unlocks new bits for me to use my fancy new electric precision screwdriver, such as the ability to screw and unscrew motherboard standoffs. Yes, these other 2 screwdrivers aren't electric, and that is an advantage for the xCool. It will be easier than having to ratchet your hand to screw everything in, but I guess that's the point. The Cobalt doesn't have extra torque, but the iFixit can remove its extension piece and use that for extra torque, and that's something I do find myself using, but it's likely I won't need the extra torque with the xCool. The iFixit is the lightest and thinnest out of the bunch. I weighed them all with the PH1 bits. The iFixit weighs 0.85 ounces or 24.7 grams. My Cobalt 1 weighs 2.14 ounces or 60.6 grams. And the xCool weighs 2.31 ounces or 65.3 grams. And the weight of the entire kits, the iFixit one is 12.03 ounces or 340.8 grams. The Cobalt is 12.65 ounces or 358.7 grams. And the xCool is 13.98 ounces or 396.3 grams. Yes, the xCool weighs more, but I won't hold it against it. There's a battery to account for, not to mention the larger size of the screwdriver itself. And volume-wise of the actual kits, the iFixit one is 428.45 centimeters cubed, the Cobalt is 625.6 centimeters cubed, and the xCool is the smallest, 285.12 centimeters cubed. My measurements could be a little off, but it's still the most compact set I have now, and I won't notice another extra 50 grams in my bag. And even if I did, it would be worth the extra little space savings I get from fitting an entire kit. I'm going to pit these screwdrivers against each other, seeing how long it takes to unscrew these 5 laptop screws and then screw them back in. I think we already know the winner. It's going to be the 400 RPM electric screwdriver, but by how much and how much time could this save you? I tested this a few times per screwdriver, and as I got faster doing this test, I was a little surprised by how fast I could do it manually with the other screwdrivers. Yes, the xCool is the fastest, but not by much, maybe about 20%. This screwdriver is currently on a flash sale on the Cool Gadget website for $45, but it's on sale from $60. It may also be noted that they may only ship to the US as of right now, but maybe not by the time you're watching this. There are other electric precision screwdriver sets, many of which are around this $45 price point, and a lot of them look fairly similar, some very similar. This Xiaomi one, for example, has a nearly identical case, but many of the others don't look as nice as this kit. I haven't tested any of these other kits, but the biggest difference seems to be the 400 RPM motor. Others are typically 200 RPM, so you'll be screwing faster, saving time. I also haven't tested any of these other kits to be able to recommend them, but for $45, would I recommend this? Yes. Though if you are looking for something electric, there are sets from reputable brands such as iFixit for under $40. Here's what I really like overall about this electric precision screwdriver. The case. It's very sleek, compact, feels good, and I just love holding it. As well as the button to release the innards is satisfying to press. The bit storage cleverly uses both sides not to waste any space. The screwdriver fits well in the hands, the buttons are easy to press, and the display is a nice touch. It's cute and gives a simple, clean look at the necessary metrics. And finally, battery life. This thing lasts forever. That's hyperbole, but you don't have to worry about it running out of battery out of nowhere. Now, while you can build a computer with this, you may want an actual screwdriver, something that's a little thinner and longer perhaps, but accounting for 9 ATX motherboard screws, 4 power supply screws, 4 for an SSD or even another, and then 1 for an NVMe drive, 4 for your cooler, and then 2 for each side panel. That's 30 screws a computer. Out of 500 screws, on a single charge, this thing is rated for over 16 computers built. That's kind of crazy. Now for things I don't like as much, many of which are related to the things I do like. As you push the bit storage back into the case, it makes a bit of a sharp, ringy, metallic sound as it goes back in. Not a big deal, but it's something I noticed while enjoying to fidget with the release button of the case. You can learn to push it back in with more of a muted sound or even silently, but that involves some thought, and I don't like thinking. The bits can be a little hard to read unless in the right angle of light, and that's fine. Many bits are like this, but it can take an extra second or two to find out which bit I'm looking for, as the sizes aren't printed on the case. Also within the bit storage, I think they could have been organized a little better. Like, why are these 2 drill bits swapped? Maybe there's some drill bit etiquette that I'm unaware of. The chuck and chuck nuts that I never have installed, because I don't typically drill things, are always in the case, and I have an extra one sitting over a drill bit. And the storage for the chuck nut doesn't feel very secure, and it's the most likely thing to fall out of the case. Yes, you can save time by screwing electrically, and the chuck nut will prevent the bit from slipping out or coming out of your unscrewed screw. But having to remove the chuck nut makes switching bits a slight more of a hassle than it could be otherwise. I mean, that's the trade-off, I guess. Do you want quick bit switching or do you want secure bits? I also realized that you can do the electric screwing to quickly unscrew the chuck nut. That's kind of fun, actually. Also, the magnetization isn't that strong. You can somewhat easily drop screws. And the entire zone dedicated for this doesn't seem to work very well, at least for me. And these may be really nitpicky things, and that might stress of how little there is to complain about. This thing is really cool. This mini electric precision screwdriver set from xCool has replaced my other precision screwdrivers. It can, in some cases, even replace my full-size screwdrivers, but not all of them for every case. Using my link in the description, you can buy yourself your own mini electric precision screwdriver set, and using that link, it gives me a little kickback if you do get something. And thank you very much for watching. Thank you to Cool Gadget. I really enjoy your screwdriver. Thank you for sending it over. Overall, I really like it. Very cool.